Hey everybody, it's Gavin and this is the Heathen household. Today we've got another interview for you guys. Today we're going to be interviewing Emilia and McKayla of River Pine Kindred here in Texas. So sit back, relax, and let's get into this. So tell us a little bit about yourselves. How long have you been practicing heathenry and what brought you guys to heathenry?
I'm gonna let you go first, Miss Boss Lady. All right. I have been a part of the Heathen path for about 13 years now. It kind of, when I was a child, I felt like the old gods were calling to me in a way, but I didn't understand because I grew in a Christian household. So it really didn't make any sense until I got older in my 20s, in my early 20s. And my friend came up to me one day and he was like, "Do you realize you have a lot of heathen core values?" And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" He was like, "I want you to read this book and I want you to tell me what you think." And after reading this book that he gave me, I don't remember what book it was because it was so long ago. It made a lot of sense on how my moral compass was and how it compared to the heathen ways. And I started my journey going through Asatru, and then I um, escalated more into the more cultural Germanic style of how their core values were when you get into the more historical things and whatnot. And it just, to me, it just felt like coming home. It made sense because my great grandmother was Norwegian, and I'm partially Norwegian, but to me it just felt like home and understanding my heritage and where I came from and how I connected with my gods and my ancestors. It just felt right in so many ways.
It's awesome.
For me, it came to me basically like in a dream. Uh, Loki basically presented himself to me, and Thor guided me to him. And like basically, what I remember, because this was like 6, 7 years ago when this happened, I just remember thanking Thor, like personally, and him leading me to him to Loki. And then I think a month later, I met Emilia in college, and she just kind of pointed me out of her crowd and was like, you're it. You're something. There's something about you." And I was like, "I don't know what it is, but okay." And that's kind of how like we became friends. And then I started learning more about the Norse path through her and all of her books and teachings that she has saved under a million different things. So she is definitely like a super encyclopedia, and that's kind of how I got into Norse paganism and heathenry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, are either of you married? If so, are your spouses heathen?
Uh, I'm not technically married, but I am in a common law marriage, basically. My spouse, he is Christian, but he is the most open Christian that I've ever met in my life. And he's more into learning my stuff, but also he keeps his core values and things like that. But he pushes me to learn more and do more and be more.
So I'm married. I've been married for 7 years now. We have two kids together, and my husband is an atheist. And he's very opening and accepting in my ways. Like, I'll talk to him about different things like I have to do. Like, I'll have to, go do a meetup, or I have a ritual this month. And I let him know everything that's going on. He understands what's going on, and he's very understanding and accepting towards my stuff. He occasionally will joke and call it my pagan stuff or whatever. She's got to go do pagan stuff. And I'm like, "Okay, see you guys later." And they're like, "Bye, mommy. Have fun with your pagan stuff and whatnot." So, but we're pretty coexisting with everything. It doesn't really bother us either way with stuff.
That's awesome. And so, how do you, with having children, do you teach your children as a heathen or do you just kind of leave that up to them for when they get older?
So, my children display their own interest in certain things. Like my daughter, she knows about what mommy does and why mommy does what she does, and she participates in some things. But we kind of let our children grow at their own rate, because since we were so young and we were basically, had Christianity shoveled down our throats as children and really didn't have a choice, nor did we have an understanding, we decided to wait till our children became around the age of like 10, 11, 12, or whatever age that come to, and they could decide what path they want to go. If they decide that they want to be Christians, or they want to be pagan, or study Buddhism, or different stuff. But my daughter mainly likes to study about ancient civilizations, and like I have heathen books for her that are children books that we bought from pagan kids, and old Norse children's books that I found from different parts of the world. Like I have one book that's Norse gods and giants, and it tells all the stories that you would hear from what we would normally read, but they're in a children's form, and they're very good to give to people who are first starting out, so they kind of understand the lore and the folklore of it. And my daughter quite enjoys it. Like we just bought her the Yule Lads. It's an Icelandic story, and it tells the story of them. And she really enjoyed it over the Yule and everything like that. So she's very curious about stuff. She gets into crystals and wants to learn about herbs and science stuff, but she's also still curious about the different paths that other people can follow. Like you don't have to be just a Christian. You could read about other religions, and we leave that open for them so they could learn freely at their own time and pace.
That's awesome. How has being a heathen impacted your social lives? So we live here in Texas, which is an extremely Christian state. How do you feel it's affected your social lives, and how has the world around you impacted yourself as a heathen?
I'll let you go. Well, it's really funny because I don't like to throw it out there as like one of the first things that I tell people about being pagan. But when my husband introduces me to meetings and stuff like that, in business meetings, he's like, "Oh, she's a witch. Like this is what she does. Like she's amazing at what she does. But she's a witch." And I'm just like, "Why you're just gonna?" So I don't know, but I think I still have like very conservative like feelings about kind of just exploding it in front of everybody, because of we're around a bunch of older generations here where we are and what we do business with. So a lot of people are kind of set in their ways and don't want to like be open to it. And so I try not to like just be super out there about it. But if they do ask me, I will kind of give them like roundabout ways of what I am and what I do.
Yeah, I live in a small town of Atlanta, Texas, and there is a church on every corner of this beautiful Bible Belt area. And I have watched other people try to make different pagan community centers. Like a great example, there's a temple that they were going to buy a building and make it into one for a temple. And this guy didn't even get a chance to get insurance. And his church just randomly burnt down because he was a part of the Church of Satan. So around here, using the word pagan or trying to build a community center around here is really rough. And to talk to anybody who isn't open-minded, like most of the time, because I host a lot of events and I go to a lot of other kindred to meet, and I don't really call it folk building, but just to get to know other people in the Texas area, because we're in the what we call Archaeotex. So we're in Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So I go to different places when I get invited, and the kindred comes along with me, whoever's available that week. And you kind of just basically know who the people who are open-minded and that are pagan, because you normally, to me, you could spot them out of the crowd. That's I just got the pagan vibe off of McKayla when I met her, and I just knew she was a pagan. You can just kind of tell those people different because, I don't know, I guess it's the way we present ourselves and how we carry our core values of being a pagan. We're very different from other people. Even if we look mundane, we just know that's how I can tell if somebody is or is not, or even if they're open-minded and want to talk about it. But in this, like, I can't go to the gym and talk about, oh yeah, we had a ritual this weekend and we had a great time with our kindred. They'd be like, what? what are you talking about? Ritual? What is this? We can't talk about that stuff free in these areas because we have more Christians in this area than we do pagans. Like, I'm pretty sure, I think we have maybe 150 pagans or open-minded people that are learning in just the Texarkana area. Like, I think I may have only know of like 5 pagans in the town that I live in. And, it's only a population of like 5,000 people. So I've gotten used to being by myself and learning at my own time. And, when the right people come to want to talk about stuff, I help them and everything. But it's mainly through Facebook and, the social
Mhm.
media. Because people are like, hey, I'm trying to find a kindred. And I'm like, well, what part of Texas are you in? And then I'll send them people that I know a part of other kindreds. And, I'll let them know, like, hey, this is more a laid back kindred, or this kindred has more core values and they're more family structured than having independent people come in who aren't settled down yet. They're more of family clan compared to a more open kindred that'll invite whoever they want whenever they want for gatherings, which is more popular in the Dallas and Austin and Fort Worth areas from what I've seen. Where if you go further down south towards the San Antonio areas, they have more family kindreds. Like, it's the family network doing their own things. Where in Texarkana, everybody just kind of gets together because there's not enough of whatever type of pagan there is in that area. So it just it varies from place to place and the different people that you come across.
Right. So, how important do you find the lore to be in your daily lives and in your religious practice?
So with me, when it comes to the lore, because I'm a big nerd, I like to read anything I can get my hands on, as long as it's at least close to a primary or secondary source, and it's not new age paganism in my book. Because I'm kind of a stickler on it. Because don't get me wrong, everybody has their own UPG and whatnot. But when it comes to the lore, when reading the sagas, the Eddas, and just reading the folklore in general, it kind of teaches us life lessons to help us grow as people. And when you get into reading about history, especially about the war band and how like the Roman Empire was and how the Germanic tribes were, you see certain things on how they lived and what they did. And sometimes, occasionally, you see history almost repeat itself with a situation, but it never happens. It's like, whoa. It's like, I remember reading about that in here when a certain political issue happened. It's like, I wonder if something may similar happen in our area. Or, you see people from stories of the lore and have their core values on how they carried stuff, or stories from, it doesn't really matter what saga you want to pick from, but you see people that have certain things that remind you of stuff that you find in the lore and the sagas.
I like to kind of take what I learned from the stories as like personal lessons that I've had to learn throughout life, and like growing older and trying to figure out who I am, like that it helps me find what basically kind of like a guideline of like how to be, how to act, and connect deeper with other things. I prefer like watching YouTube videos or like listening to it rather than like reading really, really long texts and going through that. Like, I'm kind of the opposite of Emilia, but do like listening to the stories and hearing all the cool things that happened. And I'm a big sucker for the children's stories, because I like how everything just comes to life, and like it also teaches children those same life lessons that they'll need to learn when they grow older as well.
It's good to have a little bit of variance in approach.
Yeah, we're really polar opposites when it comes to learning, because I read like the real dry and nitty gritty stuff that people just want to gouge their eyes out. They're like, this is so boring. Like, I'm falling asleep while I'm reading about the war band. Like, nobody wants to read about that. And I'm like, oh, I find it fascinating because you can understand how people lived and how their values were. And they're like, this is boring, Emilia.
See, it's cool, but I need visuals and our audio. Like that just makes it more interesting and more cool, in my opinion. Like, I want reenactments, or like actually like interactive storytelling, basically like how bards do things and stuff like that.
Right. Right. So, when was y'all's kindred founded? What were some challenges you faced while founding River Pine?
So I'm gonna have to mostly answer these because McKayla came in shortly after we got everything set up. Because me and the other founder that came in together with me, which he's no longer with us, sadly. When we first started out, I think it was right after the summer of 2018. We had all came together, and this guy found me on Facebook, and he was like, hey, I want to start a kindred, and I know a bunch of people that would be interested. And I'm like, say what? He was like, yeah, we don't have a kindred in this area, and I think it would be really important for us to find other heathens and bring us all together. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, we need to start with our foundations. We need to know what our cores are, what we find acceptable and unacceptable for our kindred. Do we want a 501c3? How is this going to work with a community that is very Christian based? Are we going to do, pagan meetups? Are we going to meet kindreds? And I just asked tons and tons of questions, and he just found answers for all of them. And the main issue was when we finally all got together, and it started out with 5 people, and the 5 people we made the council. And we sat down and talked about all the things that we wanted, what we didn't want, things that we should be cautious of, or more things that we should be accepting of. And almost everybody was married in our kindred. We had a lot of married couples in our kindred when it first started out and everything. And it just kind of, I guess, just naturally bricked itself together and made its foundation into what it is today. But due to the pandemic and people's views changing on what they decided what they wanted to do with their heathen path, our numbers slowly dwindled. We started out with 12 people when our kindred first started, and I think it was kind of like the bigger hit because we had people that came with roadblocks with what was going on with their life, and I was completely understanding about it. And I told them whenever they were ready to come back, we'll be here with open arms and whatnot. And to me, the people that were leaving because of personal issues hit harder more than when we would have just a normal, typical, mundane roadblock that was having to deal with the kindred. Like, how would we get funds to do something? I'm like, well, I could do rune readings, or, to raise money, or, oh, how are we going to get books? Well, I find, older books that were free, and I would add them to our libraries and stuff. And there, we would go on weekends to meet other people and stuff like that. We just didn't really have a whole lot of issues in the beginning. It actually happened like a couple of years later, because we're on our 3rd year now. I think we're on our 3rd year. Yeah. We're like in between our 3rd and 4th year, because we actually didn't open our doors until 6 months after the kindred started. And then we opened our Facebook for River Pine Kindred, and then we opened a group chat for the local area for the Architects Heathen groups, because we have like an Architects Pagan community. And we have like different ones like shamanism and different things like Wiccan and whatnot. So you have different areas that you can go to and everything. So people are always learning. It doesn't matter if you access our library off a Dropbox or you go to our pages to learn stuff. Like, there's always something, even if you don't want to be a part of the kindred, we'll still help you grow. We may not be there to hold your hand and help you walk your path, but at least you'll have the foundations to learn. That was one of the main things, because I hear people complain. They're like, there's nothing good to read. Like, everything's just real basic and simple, like, and whatnot. So that was one of the things that I decided to work on, because I was alone for like 5 or 6 years before I even thought about joining a group, because I just practiced alone and did my own thing and whatnot. And I think the kindred helped a lot of other people who joined our kindred who were curious to see how we did stuff. And it kind of inspired them to find their own way, that what made them happy. But we just have issues with people kind of coming and going, not because of anything we do wrong. It's just they're just going through life issues, and the pandemic doesn't help anything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, that's been a big wrench in a lot of people's plans as of late. So as you touched on, materials are expensive. A lot of our books, I mean, some of them are even out of print that go for $40, $50, $60 nowadays. How do you teach your kindred? How do you accumulate the resources to allow people to have a comprehensive education?
PDF drop boxes
Yeah.
are so helpful. Like,
I think
she
I
has a whole
have-
Dropbox full of like, I think she has like almost like 400 to 500 books.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
that's on there. Like,
And they're
it's-
just free PDFs that I found online that are completely legal to download and everything. Like it's just such an old book and somebody paper scanned it and put it in a library somewhere and you could print it off. And I've got books from all sorts of stuff. And then because some of them I've had to buy. Like I've had to buy some books, but I just buy like a couple every month, or I tell them, hey, we need this for the Kindred. It's going to cost this much money. And everybody just kind of pitches together so we could buy the book as a PDF file and then we put it on our Dropbox so we could all share it amongst each other and stuff.
Mhm.
And everything. And you could access this to read it, but you can't really download it. So you could read it from the Dropbox. So there's no theft or anything like that done to it.
Mhm.
And
Right.
when it comes to teaching people, I found that not everybody learns the same and everybody has different paces on which they do stuff. So what I do is I give people the books that they are asking for and they ask me questions as they read the book. Like they'll tell me a passage from the Hamival and they'll be like, well, what does this mean? Can you explain this to me better? And then I'll, shoot them a text and be like, this is what that means. And they're like, okay, thanks. And then they'll go about their day reading more and more. And I just kind of let everybody learn at their own pace because it took me 6 years of reading books to finally get the nitty gritty of stuff because I got bad books for so long. They were just they were neo-pagan. They weren't the nitty gritty historical stuff because I would always ask questions like, well, where's the rest of this at? Like, so I'd have to go back in the references and figure out where they came up with this thought at. And then I would have to go buy that book to understand what they were talking about. Something like normally a book would take me a month to 6 months to read, depending on how complex it was of what I was learning and reading about. So I wouldn't expect anybody else to just zoom through a book if it took me that long. So I just let everybody learn and go at their own pace. So it's not like me being a strict teacher and be like, hey guys, we're doing this week. I want everybody to have their own thoughts and feelings about it.
Yeah, we definitely don't get no worksheets with
Yeah.
workbooks.
I don't like half of us are going to college anyway, so we don't need any more homework than we already have. So I just let everybody do their own thing at their own pace and we come together for ritual and stuff and we have our pagan meetups and we just have a good old time. Like it's not I don't know, I found some places like they're really strict about teaching, like in different pagan communities, they're very like I guess how they function, like they have one teacher and you don't question what he or she says. Where with me, I expect you to ask me questions because that's what the whole learning process of your own experience. Like this kindred's here to help you grow as a person. You're not here for my benefit. This is here to help you and help this community grow into something great.
It's definitely a community thing, and we learn from each other in our different perspectives. That's for sure.
Certainly. So how do you host your blóts? Where do you host your blóts? How important is it to you to host historical blóts?
So with ours, it's a mix of historical because we still do the 4 major holidays, but we also have some stuff that's spoke of in Old Norse and some of it that's spoken in Old Icelandic and some stuff that's spoken in the Anglo-Saxon time. So they have different things. So some people will call, in February, Desir, or they would have Charming of the Plough, which was a cultural holiday. We kind of mix it together where we do Charming of the Plough and, ask the gods and our ancestors to bless the land and stuff like that. But some people get into like the other holidays. Like with us, we have 10 holidays that we have. And we're always modifying them. Like we don't feel if it fits just right for our kindred and stuff. But we have the same setups like most people do. Like we have our bowl, we have our offering plate, we have our horns and our meat, and we have flowers decorated around our vey. And everybody cooks their own meals. Like I asked them, please fix your own meal because it means more to our ancestors and the gods as an offering. And we give a plate and we set it outside underneath our tree that we have. And we pour the meat on the roots and whatnot. And we have a fire and everything, and everybody gathers around and whatnot. Our rituals normally take about 30 minutes. Yeah, it's
You're so
not.
weird.
Yeah, it's not really long or anything like that. And as we, I do the Sicker from Lord's Prayer. Start off with that, and then I go into speaking about the gods and this holiday and our ancestors and whatnot, and then I go into the oaths, toasts, and boasts after we give our offerings, and whoever wants to speak and say whatever they want to, and then I close with our thing. We mainly just do food offerings. We don't really do anything other than that.
I've come to find that that's pretty common these days. A lot of people don't have, the land or the finances to actually give blood offerings. So it's little. I mean, we've just got an acre here, so we're pretty much at the same boat. I know what you mean.
I'm pretty lucky. I have 10 acres, so like I
Oh,
could go
wow.
hunting if I want to and stuff. I've tried to encourage the guys on deer hunting season, like when it's close to one of the rituals, like, hey, you guys should go deer hunting. And they're like, oh, I'd love to, but I gotta go get my license and take my class or whatever to get my hunting license. And they just kind of like, they're like, oh, I'm busy with the kids or something. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm like, I'll go do it. And they're like, no, 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 no. We could just fix food like we normally do. I'm like, I'm not afraid. I'm like, I want to go deer hunting because I have bows and stuff like that, and stuff to go hunting because like I enjoy it. But I'm also busy too, so it's hard to find time to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning after going all day long. It's just kind of like you got to pick and choose your battles. So it's easier to cook than it is to go and hunt and take 4 hours to clean an animal. And then they're like, oh, well, we got a ritual in a couple hours. Hopefully we get this deer ready by then. It takes too much, It's a lot of work.
Right. Absolutely.
And we found that food offerings work just as well as, hunting an animal and giving it an offering to the gods.
Right. So, how have you built a kindred culture? Do you feel like River Pine's culture is different from other kindreds? How important is you to have how excuse me? How important is it for you to have your own identity in your eyes?
Well, from what I found from all the kindreds are unique in their own way. Like if you get further down into Texas, they have more of that southern country boy thing going on. Like they're very Texan and yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And then you get the city folks, like people from Tyler and Austin and other areas like Houston. They don't have that. I guess those Texas country ways. They're more, cityfied, I guess you want to call it. They're more laid back, and they want to have a good time and stuff like that. And some of them are big gamers, and they like to do that after they have their ritual and whatnot. And some of them, they do drum circles, and some of them, most of them, everybody drinks normally after having a bloat and whatnot. Everybody wants to toast to the gods and our ancestors, but it's just everybody's kind of different. Like with our kindred, we're very laid back. We don't really put up with drama. Like if somebody comes around trying to stir stuff up, I'm like, hey, I don't know what town you came from, but you need to go there. Like we're not about that. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with you today. I don't know if you're just angry at your ancestors or whatever happened, but we're really not about that. And every just one of them's different. Some of them are more welcoming than others, and some of them are real serious and not so laid back. They just all vary. And like with us, I just think we're just really laid back and we just let everybody be themselves. Like even in our meetups, like we have a potluck and everybody talks about their path. Like I ask people to not talk about politics and stuff because that's not what we're here for. We don't bash other religions and stuff. Like you could talk about, something that happened to you and you wanted to warn somebody of the community that these people may not be good people to be around because of what happened to you or something like that. But we're just really laid back. We're just here to honor the old ways and our ancestors and stuff. We're not here for, hierarchy status to see who's the biggest and baddest kindred. We just want to have a good time and honor the old ways.
Basically, we just want to have like a community that we can all relate to and kind of like learn from.
Yeah. And we have to work with other communities, not just the heathen community. Like we have to work with, the Wiccans and the witches and the druids and stuff like that, and people who are Satanists and stuff like that. Like we just all work together in our community in Texarkana because we all know each other and we all grew up together because the town is so small. compared to Dallas or Houston or Austin, we're so tiny. We've known each other or we went to school with one another. So we're just like, hey, man, we're having a pagan meetup. If you want to join, we're having a potluck. Or they're like, hey, we're having a women's circle. Would y'all ladies like to join and different stuff? And like we have, different groups for the men and the women of the pagan community so they could, learn and grow with each other and stuff. It's not just one way or no way.
No, definitely not our way or the highway.
Yeah. No.
Well, that's good. So you talked a little bit about engaging with other communities. How does River Pine do community outreach? Do you do anything in your local community like soup kitchen, pick up trash? What do you do for your community?
I think we each individually do things for our community. Like we haven't as a whole done anything as of yet, since everybody keeps leaving. But I personally, I'll help with food pantries at like local churches and stuff like that. I'll go help them distribute food to the homeless or whoever needs help cleaning up. I'll help them do whatever. I'm constantly in the community as it is as a business owner, so that kind of just helps to just give back in general.
And I do more environmental work because that's what I went to college for. And so like I do more stuff for the environmental wise. And it's kind of as needed for the area, depending on what's going on at the time. Like for the longest, I would take samples and test the water for the city. And there was another time that I worked at a plant that I made stuff for renewable resources. And I just do different things. Like I do recycling at my house. Like McKayla will tell you, like I don't own a paper napkin. It's all cloth napkins. Like we don't have paper plates or nothing. And I recycle almost everything. And that's how I give back to the community, as well as I help a lot with the pagan community to help others find, their kindred, their coven, their grove, or a certain specific thing that they're wanting to study that I know somebody that may possibly be a teacher. So
That's
and
awesome.
we have one person, she's going to school to be a paramedic and eventually she'll be a mortician, so she'll help the community with the dead. And then we have people that help with Ren fairs and stuff like that in our kindred. And
I think in like each of us do like small things for the community, but like I know me and Emilia do more bigger projects for things, as opposed to everybody else does like little smaller things, like just general kindness for others and stuff like that.
no, I think their stuff's just as big as ours. It's just it's on different scales of what's needed at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm a busybody, like between raising kids and going to college and doing environmental stuff and whatever the kindred needs, or if somebody invites us to a banquet that they're having for their bloat and whatnot, like I always go to that. And plus I have to travel to marry people and different stuff like that. So and I drag McKayla with me because I don't like to drive alone.
Yeah, and then I drag you to all the Ren fairs and stuff like that for all of our other business stuff.
Yeah, another thing that we're doing for the community, we're hosting a
Viking Festival.
Yeah, Spring Awakening Viking Festival. Yeah. So we're doing that too for the area because I got tired of going to all these Ren fairs that weren't kid friendly and whatnot and family friendly. So we decided that instead of doing medieval or Renaissance, we were going to do Viking style. And we found all the primitive vendors that we needed. We got 25 so far.
Wow.
And hopefully it'll help the community branch out and be a little more open-minded and be like, oh, this was fun. Like, this is what the pagan community is about. Even though we're not really trying to represent the pagan community, we're just trying to help the community in general to be like, hey, there's also fun stuff around the corner, not just what everybody else does in town. Because we have a lot of people that do a lot of shops and different stuff, but it's more like modern and main day stuff, where I prefer Renaissance and the Ren fairs and stuff like that because it's more homemade and
ye old nitty gritty.
yeah, basically. So, but we're hoping that it turns out really great and we have a good turnout and whatnot.
We will. So, we're gonna have a great turnout.
So we've been working our butts off trying to get that all squared away with I've never seen so many emails in my life. I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. What is sleep?
Yeah. What is sleep? Sleep is for the weak.
Yep. I'm literally gonna be hearing the gods in the next few days if I don't get any sleep.
So tell us, like I said, I was actually just about to ask you about that. Tell us a little bit about your festival. What gave you the idea? How have you funded it? And what advice would you give to people who what advice would you give to people who want to do the same?
So basically, we started this as a birthday gift from my husband to me and basically Emilia. He's like, this is y'all's birthday gift for like the next 5 years. Like, I'm not getting you anything else. So, and like that's how it started. Because me and my husband, we do events for a living. So like we throw Comic-Cons, other conventions, just meet and greets. We have video game tournaments and stuff like that. So like we do so much. And it just helped that Emily was like, we should do this. And I was like, sure, we could do that. And Jesse's like, all right, bet. And then we kind of,
yeah,
I
complained. I was like, man, I'm tired of going to all these Ren fairs and medieval fairs. Where are the Vikings at? And, there's the Texas Viking Festival, but it's too far away from us. And I was sitting there talking about, I want it to be family and kid friendly. Like, I want the basics like archery and axe throwing, but, I want the kids to have bouncy castles, rock walls, tug of wars, hacky sack races, and, to play all sorts of games and, get to feed the wildlife animals because we're having Terry's Wildlife come out with her animals. And, all the money that she makes is going towards her animals and stuff. We're not charging her for that. And we're having Darlene's face painting and stuff, and we have all sorts of people. We have 25 vendors so far, and we've just been sending emails and telling people like, hey, I want to come out or whatnot. And the kids are free. Like, we don't charge kids under the age of 12. They get to join for free, and all they have to do is pay for games. That's all they have to pay for, nothing else.
That's awesome. And so how have you funded this adventure so far?
So we've had quite a few sponsorships and people like volunteering to do things for us. Like I think we have a blacksmith that's coming out to just do demonstrations and stuff like that. And he's volunteering his business to just be put out here for our first year. And a lot of it is just like personal funding and any like basically if we make any like sales on tables, we'll use that for our like promotional stuff. And basically the goal for the whole thing is for it to be kind of like self-sustaining so we don't come out of pocket and it can run itself.
Certainly.
Yeah, because they say the first 5 years are the hardest for Ren fairs.
Mm-hmm. And we're trying to beat that statistic.
Yeah, we're trying to go above and beyond that. Like, because I'm more of the people person. I'm great with communicating with people and explaining, this is our inspiration. This is what we hope to expect. And we're cherry picking people who are family friendly for the kids. And, after the kids go to bed, if everybody wants to, drink mead or sit by the bonfire, that's fine. But until the kids go to bed, we're not going to get belligerent or get all crazy or be inappropriate because this is family friendly. A lot of the Ren fairs I went to, yeah, they were fun and friendly and stuff like that, but they weren't kid friendly. Like there's stuff, like not trying to beat up the Ren fairs because, they're well established. They could do whatever they want, But it's just I realized, some of them I couldn't take my kids to because they weren't family friendly. Like my little kids would be scarred for life if I took them to some of the ones that we have went to. My kid would be like, Mommy, what's that? And I'm like, oh, no, cover your eyes. No. Like, sorry, sweetheart. Let's go home. I'll go get some ice cream. Just don't talk about it. And I don't want it to happen. So we decided to make it kid friendly and family friendly. And that is what we're strictly pushing to make people understand, like, it doesn't have to be like a party all the time. It could be family friendly. And then when the kids go to bed, everybody can have fun afterwards.
Yeah, that's basically the basis of like HypeCon. the company that me and my husband run is technically his, but I say I run it too. But HypeCon, it stands for Helping Youth Progress Every Day, and it's to help the younger community in learning that there's stuff to do in this area. There's ways to stay out of trouble. You have like a community that you can go to, do fun things, talk to, open up, and like just have something of a support that's not just school related or even and it gives kids like an opportunity that like don't have like even computers or anything at home. It gives them something to go out and do and enjoy.
That's awesome. So what advice, so you touched a little bit on how these events are often pretty far away from people. I think the Texas Viking Fest is like what, 4 hours away from us.
Yes.
What advice would you give for people wanting to do this locally? That way they can make events like the one you're doing more accessible to their community.
Well, the community plays a big part in it, because if you don't know anybody in the community, you don't have helping hands for sponsors or people that, want to help volunteer. If you don't really have anybody, you don't know who you're bringing in. And I honestly think, the more you know about your community and your friends and acquaintances and businesses, it actually helps you in the long run. Because if you're somewhere that you're not really well connected with your community, like not just pagan community but the mundane community, it doesn't really help you in the long run. It kind of actually cripples you, because I think between me knowing the pagan community and her knowing all the other people outside of the pagan community, as well as what House does, because he knows everybody. Like, I don't think Jesse doesn't know anybody. And
He really does.
I think between the three of us, like, to me, I think the more the merrier. Like, you have to have one that has the connections, the one that can do the stuff in the backgrounds, the emails, the, writing all the stuff down, handling the money and whatnot. And
it definitely takes a team to get together to do this, because it is so hard running events by yourself. Like it's also easier, but it's definitely harder, because like if you have people to delegate things to do and to help with, it makes it easier. But you also need to know like how your community is going to react to it, like if how much they want to even be involved. And like then it's also spreading the word. Like you have to really talk about it all the time, get it out there, make sure everybody knows about it. And if nobody knows about it, then like nobody's gonna show up.
Right.
like, I think her spouses drove all the way to Tyler or Longview, posting out flyers.
Yeah, he went to Tyler and like yesterday or the day before, and then he also stopped in Jefferson, and I think he went to Longview, and next week he's going all the way up to Little Rock.
Wow.
And spreading it out there.
Yeah.
So like we're trying to get within a 5-hour radius around us, to like just to kind of know and be involved. And it takes a lot of like Facebook really helps with our promotion, because it like if you pay for their promotion, then everybody sees it, because it's gonna blow up all over everybody's newsfeed, because that's how they do. So
right.
And it's just a lot, but also like if you can kind of keep everything organized, it does help.
I have tons of notebooks. I write everything down, and I'm like, McKayla, I talked to this person today and they said this. And so she has it in her text, for her social media. And she's like, okay, so she can scroll up and down to see what we talked about. And, I'll tell people to send pictures for their vending booth, and then I'll send it to her and give her the name, and they'll give me the description. So it's one less thing that she has to do for social media, because I'm more of the social butterfly. I'm the one that likes to be, one of the people of, Tyler Kindred, he calls me Chatty M, because I'm pretty chatty. So yeah,
that's for sure.
So what are your plans with River Pine? Do you plan on staying at the local level? Do you plan on trying to branch out into the national level? What do you want to do with your kindred? What's your 5-10-year plan?
I think it's mainly we're gonna stay like local for right now, because I don't know if we can handle national level.
Yeah.
To be honest, because national level puts a lot of responsibilities on everybody.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially because of the area we have. It's not, to me, I don't think that they will be ready for that. Like, I literally think that, say, for example, we were going to decide that we wanted to build a temple
Mhm.
to have an area for where not just the heathen community, but the pagan community can all come together and have their own stuff. Because there's not enough of us. To me, I would want to make a pagan community center, and I would probably find an abandoned church, most likely, because we have some of those around that, their church got bigger and they have these little ones that are, laying around somewhere in the different towns that are around our area. And I'm like, well, why can't we just buy one of those and remodel it? Because it would be cheaper to do than spend, $200,000 or $300,000 to build a temple, and it possibly get burnt down in the process of trying to build it. Because if the one guy that was trying to do a satanic temple had his burnt down the first week before he even got any insurance, imagine what would happen if we tried to actually, if we raised all the money to do all that, imagine what would happen to us. And we don't want that to happen. So we'd probably just buy a church that somebody had abandoned because they built a bigger one, because it would be a cheaper fix and everything. And it would be in the, in the country somewhere, or possibly, because I have 10 acres, but I don't think I'm ready to build one on my land yet.
Your mom would probably burn it herself.
Yeah, she probably would. She'd probably do a lot of match to it. But I don't think we're ready for that, because the area isn't ready for that. Like, maybe like in 5 or 10 years of everybody saving their money up to do something like that.
Like in 5 to 10 years, the community would be more open to like pagans in general.
Yeah.
Because there is like totally like a whole shift going on right now.
Yeah, there's a big shift
in the world. So like, I think like then would be the best time to build, if we were going to build.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think we've only, like, I know in a lot of the Facebook groups for the pagan community on social media just itself, like, I think there's like 250 people in the Arclatex for like our Texarkana area. And so I'm pretty sure it's maybe like a little more, but they're just not on social media. But that's, to me, like, it's still not enough to help the community. Like, we have pagan meetups and drum circles and, do different things and invite people to, when people are getting married, to help support the pagan community and whatnot. But, a lot of people go to the Crystal Moon store for inspiration for all their needs for our community. Where there's really nothing else besides that. And, everybody sells different stuff. Like, I make runes up there, and I make these little discs that have Icelandic sigils on it, the bind runes and whatnot. And that's really about, and I make ornaments. Like, I make wooden ornaments with bind runes on it to help people who are, Norse paganism, that want to decorate their house that way, to have those things. And then I make some apothecarian stuff. That's what I care to do, because I make it for my family. But it's just the community's not ready for a lot of things. And it's really sad, because, it's like this void that we can't have filled, because an hour and a half down the road in Shreveport, there's a UU church. And the ADF has their gatherings there. And it's crazy, because we don't have an ADF here in Texarkana. And it makes me sad, because I would love to have one. Like, I'm pretty sure I would just work at that place all the time to just help build that community up, and, tell all my friends, be like, hey, y'all should come here. We're having a gathering. We're teaching a class, or, and it's just like basic stuff. Everybody could grow and, have women's classes for knitting and stuff. And Crystal Moon plans on doing that. They plan on doing classes for the community. And maybe one day it'll turn into something greater, not just for Crystal Moon, but maybe it could transfer over into a community center that Crystal Moon and the community put together. But it's just, we're not ready for that yet. And it's really sad.
Yeah.
It's like an empty void for me that I would love to see grow. It just bugs me. It eats at me every day. I'm like, I want a temple. Where is the temple at? And it's not happening.
Right. So for our viewers who don't know what that is, would you mind explaining what the UU is in the ADF?
The UU is the Universal Church in Shreveport, and the ADF is a part of the Druid community, and that's where it's kind of, you know how the trough is for our area. It's similar to that, but it's for the Druid community, and they have council members and stuff like that, and train people to be priests and high priestesses, so they teach classes and stuff in their own area. And I think it takes like 5 to 10 years to become one, depending on the classes that you take and whatnot. Ravina Winslow, I think it is. She's the main lady over the ADF for the UU Church in Shreveport. And they have quite a bit of people gathered there, because we would join there, and they tried convincing me and the Kindred to start teaching classes up there and to start having rituals up there, but it would clash with the ADF stuff because our stuff is so close to one another, depending if it falls on a certain moon or whatnot, you know. And I just didn't really want to have to clash, or, you know, they had like rules that I possibly didn't know if I would agree with that would be good for our kindred and stuff. But everybody was super friendly there. Like, we would have potlucks like we did, and everybody had their own style of how they gave their offerings, and it was just a really great thing to experience. And we always enjoyed going and visiting with everybody, even though they were Druids. Like, we still had a great time with them. I was just going there to visit my best friend and whatnot. My other best friend. Calm down. Don't get upset.
Man, you can't do that to me.
We've got it on camera.
I know. See, she gets super jealous if I talk to anybody else, but she's like, it's okay if I talk to other people.
Yeah, I have a platonic jealousy. I posted on social media to her. She's not allowed to have a best friend after she meets me. And I said, the only best friend you had before you met me was your imaginary friend. Just to aggravate her.
But what if my other best friend is the gods? Huh? You can't be jealous of them.
I can't argue with that. Can't argue with it.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, I think that's everything that we've got today. Thank you guys so much for sitting down with us today and doing this interview. This was awesome. We really enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about what River Pine does and getting to know you guys as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I appreciate being invited on here.
Yeah, it's an honor to be on your podcast. We totally enjoyed it very much.
And that was Emilia and McKayla of River Pine Kindred. We hope you guys enjoyed the interview as much as we did. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe if you like content like this. Let us know what you thought of the interview in the comment section below, and we'll see you guys in our next video.